So we've actually, we need to amend the agenda to appoint the temporary chair. So I need to amend the agenda to name a temporary chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. I move that Jonathan Fonkello be temporary chair.
Second.
Any discussion?
Only do we have to appoint both the temporary chair of pension and the temporary chair of OPEB?
Historically, we've appointed one and it covered both in the beginning
It's of the meeting,
of the meeting.
So-
Yeah. It's for the-
so we're gonna have separate votes for.
For the
chair.
actual chair,
Yeah.
vice chair,
Yes.
for the temp chair, we only need one. Okay, cool. That's my only question. Make sure we're procedurally sound.
Any other nominations? Steve, you want to call it?
Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any, you guys have it?
All right,
Temporary chair.
thank you. So we'll just go through the meeting minutes first because it's in order. So any comments or questions on the review of minutes? All those in favor of adopting the pension committee meeting minutes for October 26, 2023, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Unanimous. Item B, OPEB Board of Trustees minutes and voting record for October 26, 2023. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting those meeting minutes from October 26, 2023, please say aye.
Aye.
Minus Steve Kirsch.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does get tricky if you.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are accepted and adopted. All right, new business item 3, pension and OPEB vote for chair and vice chair. All right, we'll start with the pension committee. I move to make Michael Manjos to be chairman of the pension committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Steve Kirsch. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Mike Manjos is the chairman of the pension committee. Now, pension committee vice chairman, I move that Steve Kirsch be the vice chairman of the pension committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason Mount. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of having Steve Kirsch as pension committee vice chairman, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, Steve Kirsch is not vice chairman of the pension committee. Right, OPEB. Okay, I move that OPEB board member Mike Vitello be chairman of the OPEB board of trustees. Is there a second?
Second.
No.
I can't do it.
I'll second that.
Second by Ron Panofsky. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Mike Vitello being chairman of OPEB, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And again, that's just the
Hearing none, it's been adopted. The vice chair of OPEB, I move that Michael Manjos be vice chair of the OPEB board of trustees. Is there a second?
second.
Second by Ron Panofsky. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of appointing Mike Manjos as OPEB vice chairman, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, Mike Manjos is vice chair of OPEB. I'm now going to turn this meeting over to Vice Chair Steve Kirsch.
Thank you. New business, item B, set the meeting schedule for the pensions and OPEB meetings for calendar year.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Mike Vitello calling in.
Oh.
Hi, Mike. Hey,
Mike.
hey, Mike, welcome. You just missed getting reelected as chairman of OPEB. Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Would you like to run the meeting, Mike, or would you defer to Steve Kirsch as vice chair of the pension committee? Your choice.
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again. I couldn't hear that.
Would you like to run the meeting or would you defer this meeting to Vice Chairman of the Pension Committee, Steve Kirsch, tonight?
Yeah, I'll defer the meeting because I'm actually driving home.
Okay. Mr. Kirsch.
Very good. Okay, item B, the meeting schedule for calendar year 2024 in your packet. You had the proposed joint regular meeting schedule for 2024 of April, July, October, and January. Is that first question, does that date work for everybody? Historically, when we've met, then I'll have a motion to accept the meeting dates as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing no nays, motion passes. Item C, discussion of discount rates and possible adjustments.
Can we just make it, that's for the pension and it's obviously.
Yes, it's a joint regular
Yes.
meeting schedule, which was what was in the packet. We just for vote.
Sorry, Steve.
No problem. Item 3 is a discussion of the discount rates and possible adjustment. I didn't have any.
So, my presentation is up on the board.
Okay,
Since I didn't have a handout, I'll just do that one. Well, I don't know, since this is the first time I've met with most of you guys, I don't know your level of knowledge on the pension plan or the OPEB plan. I can go as fast or as slow as you want, take the time. I don't know if you have a deadline you want to meet or keep the time frame.
We have another meeting at 7,
We have another meeting at 7, so.
and you have me too. I don't want to take up too much time.
The Board of Finance meetings at 7.
So I have several things on here, but we don't have, some of them will be very quickly. So the purpose, kind of touch the purpose of the valuation, which is kind of very important. It's not the underlying concept of why you have a asset-based funding, a fund for these plans. Touch base a little bit on the results from the last valuation was July 1st, 2022. We're going to get ready to do the July 1st, 24 one in the next couple of months. The main bullet is we're going to review the pension assumptions, which is really focusing on the discount rate, which are the long-term investment rate or rate return, however you want to term it. Then we'll jump over to the same things for the OPEB plan, but basically on the results, changes, and I'll just point out some of the observations of the CAFR, which is consolidated annual financial statements that you guys report that you do. That's very important to Ron over there.
It is.
And as very important to the state, and so we'll just move on from there.
Just so everyone, the CAFR, which actually is ACFR now, I don't know if, because I guess CAFR is a bad word in South America,
Okay.
apparently. I'm not kidding you. So it's ACFR is the acronym now, but it's it's basically the audit. It's our annual audit.
Annual financial report.
Yeah.
So it's very important footnotes, and it's for going out bonding and things like that. When projects, they look at those numbers in that report. So the main purpose of the valuation, right, is really to determine the cost of the town. So what's the cost? Because you guys have promised benefits, whether it's in the pension side or the OPEB side, for people that have served the town and the community, and when they retire, they're going to get some kind of benefits that you're going to pay out. So you want to set up a fund to manage that. So what is that? The benefits paid in the day's cost, right? What you promised them, plus expenses, whether it's actuarial, investment, audit, legal, things like that. Those tend to be a little smaller than the benefits you're going to pay. So that's offset by employee contributions. Employees are contributory. And the bigger one is the investment return. So we really want to, it's very important to focus on that. The more the assets earn, the less the town has to pay in the plan. The valuation, there's a couple of things. It comes up with a cost method, right? There's a cost method to kind of determine how you're going to manage to pay those benefits in the future. So this plan uses entry rate norm, which most do now because it's part of its kind of a requirement in GASB, which is something that goes in your finance report. What we call it, we develop an annual determined employer contribution. So that's what you guys fund on a fiscal basis. That has two components: the service costs or normal costs, And that's the cost of benefits earned by the participants each year, that year. So that for that fiscal year, that's the benefits earned. And then another component is what we call the past service costs, which is the unfunded liability. You guys are getting pretty close. Your past service costs is relatively small compared to a lot of other towns I work with. That's just the benefit of being pretty well funded. And that gets amortized on the pension plan over 12 years. So that's a closed amortization period. You're actually one of the only towns that I do that for. And it's closed. That's 12 years. So that means after 12 years, it's going to be fully funded. Then you're just going to be paying the annual cost. Obviously, that kind of changes year to year based on how the assets perform and how that unfunded liability goes up and down. You don't get a credit when you're overfunded because you still want to pay the normal cost, but you're not quite there yet. But it could happen in a few years.
While we're in the ADEC, so the ADEC ends up in the budget. There's an ADEC on the Board of Ed side, there's an ADEC on the town side, and there's also an OPEB ADEC on the town side, which is the police OPEB line.
Yeah.
That's where that ends up eventually.
So the next two slides are really what's in the pension plan. So this is, as Ron was just saying, there's a Board Ed pension plan and the town pension plan. These are the key results from 22. And this is in our valuation report. For comparison purposes, we always show the prior values, in that case 20. So you can see the Board of Ed had 171 people in the pension plan. Your accrued liability in the middle there is 15 million. Again, this is at 7/1/22. You have a market value of assets and an actuarial value of assets. The difference is market value of assets gets used in your CAFR or in your AFR now. ACFR, in your ACFR, that gets used because what the government wants, they want to see today what your actual is, because in the old days, people used to use different kinds of smoothing methods, so they always felt it wasn't truly the cost. But for funding, we do use an actuarial value of assets, which is a smooth number. That's kind of, you smooth gains and losses over a 5-year, or we recognize 20% of them. And that's really to dampen the volatility that you see in the market. And that you would have seen that in the last 3 years with the market going up, and down. Before that, there was a few years that was kind of level. And then the bottom is there when we determine your ADEC, which is the contribution or the budget number that you need to put aside to pay into the plan from that year. So when we do the report, it's usually for a couple of years in the future, right? It's not like we're doing a report and you're budgeting then. So this report here budgeted for the 23-24 and the 24-25 fiscal year. So the one we do and coming up in 24 is going to be for the 25-26 and 26-27 fiscal years. And that's where we're going to talk about what the impact is on your discount rate if you change it or not. Just to point out, this plan was 97% funded at that time. Then next page is you can see all the same kind of numbers for the town. The town has a few less people. They're a little better funded. Their ADEX 195 roughly, so just under 200,000. Any questions on that? It's kind of, if you want to look at one page in the report, this is probably the one because it has the most information and it has your head counts, your liabilities, your assets, and what you cost, what you're going to pay out. Okay. The next page, so this is going to be again duplicated. These are what we're looking at. So currently your investment rate of return is 6.75%. Here we've shown it going at 6.5 and 6.25 as requested. So ideally, you probably want to just focus on the bottom. Can you make it a little bigger, Devin, just so we can focus more on the? If not, it's not a big deal.
No, I just can't do it in that full screen mode.
Okay.
But
So the first column is what, just to go down to the bottom. There we go. So the first column is what the results were at 22. Again, this is all run at 7/1/22 because that was the last time we've had updated data. Again, we could, but we expect to have roughly the same kind of change. So this is kind of so you kind of understand what the change is going to be. So this tells me going from 6.75 to 6.5, which is the middle column. It looks like it's about 50, 70, almost 70 to $75,000 in increase in your budget. So that's really the kind of the number that Ron would focus on. That's what your budget impact's going to be. Likewise, if you go to 6.5 down to 6.25, again, it's another 75,000. So you think, so the way I would look at it is for every 25 basis point drop in the discount rate or the assumption, it's about $70,000 to $75,000 increase.
And look at, we're dropping the expected rate of return, which means the town has to fund more.
Right.
Any questions? So that's the Board of Ed one. So the next page has the town. And I think the town is probably roughly the same. You can see the funding ratio as well. It's still in the 90s. What we call top of the head. Let's see. The town is, so that's looks like about just under 60,000 change. If that change is made, so I guess you kind of look at 75 plus 60 is 135 or so for total budget for the town. And the pension plan side.
Yeah, so, and I think I may have asked you this on the phone, Stefan, but I'll ask it at the meeting now. So we changed the discount rate now. It'll change for the 7/1/24 valuation. So our budget numbers through 24-25 will remain where they are right now.
As I said right before, that valuation is going to do the 25, 26, and 26, 27 budget
Right.
years. So it's giving you time to prepare. And even when you do an annual value, you usually want to do it so the budget's at least a year out or 2 years out to plan it, because it's very hard, because obviously Ron's not just doing the pension plan, he's doing other time, how much snows and how much salt you're gonna need that winter, and how many projects you got going on in the summer, and what improvements you need to make, anything to the roads and things like that. So it kind of helps you budget that for the future, so it's easier to.
So dropping it tonight, changing it tonight, has no impact to what will be presented budget wise for the first election budget in 2 weeks.
Correct. And then, I mean, Devin will talk more about that, where you think you should be in 40 yards. Obviously, the lower you are, the more conservative you are. And so that all gets put in your financial report. So at the end, that's what they look like. They look for with those agencies that you got to go get bonded, get those loans or whatever. They'll look at the assumptions you use to manage your liabilities on your pension plan as well as your OPEB. So if you were using, like, say, a 7%, they look a little less favorable at that, as opposed to something more conservative. Because again, think of it as long term. Obviously, we had a lot of movement in the market the last 2 years and a half or whatever with inflation, but things are starting to come back down to normal. So, no one knows. I doubt Devin knows. Maybe she did. Otherwise, she'd probably be sitting on the beach somewhere. And,
Yeah, that's right.
But so we think things long term, not short term. Okay, so that's why, and because your plan is still active, that new interest can come in. The timeline of your plan is probably over 75, 80 years, 100 years, right? Just think of a 25-year-old comes in today, they're going to be in the pension plan for, till they say they lived at 85, 90, right? So that's why we think of long term.
Are you going to have recommendations for adjusting the value as part of your presentation?
I don't have a recommendation for adjusting the value, but we have some asset allocation modeling. So it will show out, it will model out what the current portfolio generates in terms of an expected return, and then what a couple different portfolios might look like if we wanted to become more conservative.
So, I know
So they
we,
go hand in hand, the discussion will go hand in hand.
so from a timing standpoint, we don't need, we need to make this decision before the val is done, correct? Is that so
Ideally, yes. I mean,
yeah, so tonight, the decision doesn't have to be made. We could push the vote
Mhm.
until next quarter
Right,
in April
yeah,
without having any kind of an impact.
sure.
Yeah, so what you're gonna want, and again, it depends on the timing of when we actually have all the data to produce it. You might want to see preliminary numbers to what it's actually gonna be for those fiscal, right? Because again, remember, this is 22 data, so a lot of things could happen. And some things that we've seen in the last year, like one of those years could have been a spike in pay, because pandemic kind of dampened things were all frozen, and then all of a sudden, the last year or two, we've seen a lot of towns have their salaries increase quite a bit, which will affect the numbers, right? All these things affect, retirements, what kind of benefits, if people are died or did not die, those things affect all the numbers. So you might want to wait till we get that data and make that ultimate decision. Maybe that's next January. I don't know how quickly we usually get the data that have the numbers.
If I recall, last time we did this correctly, that's what we did do, at Mike's suggestion as well, was that we waited until we had further data, knowing that it wasn't going to affect the coming budget process anyways. so that we could make a more educated decision on it, but and also it just gives everybody some time to digest this and then what Devin has just tell us. We called a special meeting last time to call, and we didn't even do it on the regular meeting. We called a special meeting to make the adjustment once we kind of had the data in hand.
When did we do that? I know-
This was, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago that we
Well, your memory's better than mine.
adjusted to the 675.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 years ago.
And when during the year, I mean, when are you gonna have these additional data?
Well, we collect data as of 6/30, 7/1,
Yeah,
24, and it's just a matter of when we, obviously we're doing 2 entities, we're doing the town side as well as the board of ed, so you're talking 350 people.
I think it was during the summer.
So actually, as the valves being prepared, you can run a.
I typically, I could do the same kind of scenario.
Yeah.
This is
Okay.
typically what we do. So what this has done, this is kind of giving you a baseline, or you kind of understand, these are the numbers you're looking at. Will they change a little? Absolutely, just based on the population. I don't know how the population has changed in the last 2 years. I mean, you could have had a lot of people leave, you have a lot of vacancies, so maybe the active population is down. Those questions I don't know, maybe Ron knows or someone in HR might know, have a feel for that. Again, the HR might have a feel for how compensation has gone in the last 2 years. I mean, we do annual statements, so.
Certainly added staff.
So and again, this is new on the board side, that the plan is actually frozen on both sides now
Oh,
for new entrants. So
when did that happen?
on the board side, fairly recent,
Okay, so you need to make sure we
Yeah,
have.
it's been frozen on the town side for a while, so it is.
I did see some new entrants, but I'm guessing it's not close to police, is that?
Yeah, so the
So, yeah,
police
who's in the
are,
plan? I don't know.
yeah, so the police are in Seamers,
Okay,
100%.
okay.
So,
So I thought there was some new entrants in the 22 val in both the board of ed and the town, so I'd have to look at which groups there were. Again, like you said, they could all
Yeah.
close now.
yeah, I'd wanna take a look, cause maybe they're being included in error. So I'd like to, that's why I'd like to kind of knock heads with you to see what that,
Absolutely. Yes, I'd want to make sure we have the updated, whatever plan amendment or plan document, or if you use a charter, however that is. Sometimes it's not always in the collective bargaining agreement, there might be a separate pension agreement for that. So we want to make sure we have that, and we know we have the updated provisions and everything that we're going to be correct.
So Ron, we don't even have to put this off till April, we can put it off beyond it.
yeah, it looks like maybe,
This time
third
next year.
quarter or even fourth,
Yeah.
I agree.
Realistically, I would think it's probably, before Christmas or after, depends on how quickly we get data and get the results. So usually we get dictated by when Ron said his next budget. So if you start a budget for the 6th plan year, that's when we should have numbers in time for him.
And I would say we should shoot for October, have it for the October meeting. Is that, for October of this year, you would be starting the budgets for.
Yeah, I'm thinking for the act for, I think the 7/1/22 is still good. It'll be good for the June 30, 23. Act for
We already did those.
the val. No, I'm sorry, 24.
24, so 22, you got 30 months, so yes.
Yeah, so we're still good there. So it'll be next year's budget to your point.
And everybody starts talking about budgets in October, so maybe we should talk about setting that for October.
I usually have them right around now, February, March, and then they finalize everything and they.
Well, we're doing that, but like on
You're
the
looking at-
board and then the first selectmen, they start asking their departments for stuff and yeah, it doesn't roll out till.
In the spring.
The Board of Ed is the first in December.
Yeah.
The first the superintendent's budget.
So remember also when you say the Board of Ed increased staff, not teachers. We don't, that's what the state, okay, it's the custodian, secretary, so all the other ones. That's
Yeah, but again, those are all
If he's.
those are all frozen.
They're all going to like formal
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Stefan, can you share any data points with regard to how other municipalities are positioned, like the 6.75? I know that you do the benchmarking and.
Yeah, that's in the
benchmarking
back.
also.
Again,
Okay.
that's
I think,
gonna
because I
be a
know
22 cap or.
that's
23
one of the
so-
things that.
But
I
you
think
can
Mike
show you
has
that,
been interested in.
you can see how that, just be that, I figured I'd say that for last, because that's
okay.
the last thing. So we've done the pension plan. I think the next slide is gonna be on OPEB. Oh, okay. So I put these two slides. These are kind of what goes in the CAFR, kind of what they were really looking at. So you have the liability. Again, the liability here is gonna be different than what was up before, because again, that's 7/1/22. This gets rolled forward. This was the last 7/1/23. These are always June 30th. So this is kind of what the liability, this was what Ron puts into his financial footnotes. These are some of the information. So the key is it shows that the plan was what, 1.4, just underfunded. So 91% funded. Again, that's on a market value basis. For funding, we use an actual value of assets, kind of, which is a smooth, and that's really to dampen the volatility in your contribution requirement. So I did that for both the Board of Ed as well as the town. So this shows that the Board of Ed is 91 and the town's a little better at 94. And that's at 6/30/23. So that's 7 months ago. One of the things I always like to stress, because when Devin goes first, she's always giving you assets up to date. So I always got to roll back the clock, to make sure you remember, you understand it's a point of time. So the valuation's at 7/1/22. This CAFR shows things at 6/30/23. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, we can probably jump to the OPEB. So again, this is the same similar exhibit to the other one. Again, this is only the town OPEB, which is really the police. They're the only ones that are that have a funded plan. You do have an OPEB plan for the Board of Ed as well, but that's an unfunded plan, which means you don't have any assets. You just do a pay-as-you-go cost for that one. So as premiums and claims come up, that's when you pay them. So that's kind of how you book it. We just show you have to do a liability though calculation that goes into the CAFR as well. So that's in there as well. But we don't need to talk about that because Devin doesn't have a fund for it. So as you can see, we don't show real for this one. This is actually very good on the OPEB side. The numbers are small, right? Because you have 2.3 million in liability at 22. Assets were just about 1.8. We did start smoothing them for this 22 valuation because if you looked at the 20 column, you can see the actual and the market were the same. That's because we don't usually smooth them when the fund is very in its infancy, because you don't really get any benefit for that. And plus, I think when we did that one, there's market value would probably been higher than the actuarial. But in 22, you had that big loss year come in, so it's a good time to smooth that, sort of smooth. That's why the actuarial value is a little higher. This shows the ADEC of just over 100,000, 102,000. So this one's not going to have as big of an impact, right? And if you looked at 20, it was 185,000. Again, the difference is because it went from 40%, 43% funded to 82% funded. So that lowered your contribution requirement. So that's good. Not most towns don't. They always kind of look at the OPEB plan as secondary, whether they're going to fund it or not. If they had a tight budget, they're going to put more money into the pension plan and less in the OPEB. Typically, is that I've seen. Next. So this is the same kind of thing where we show the 3 discount rates. You're going to see that there's not much impact going from the different rates. Looks like just about 12 to 15,000 for 25 basis point jump drop. Right, so you had 102, expected to go up to 115. She's mastering. She's mastering this increase in the size. That's okay. She's driving, so that works good for me. So 114 or up to 127. And likewise, say the same thing. Typically, OPEB vals get done. They kind of drag a little bit. Although this is only the police, so a lot of times when I do OPEB, everybody's included. So the Board of Ed and the town are included in one plan. So there tends to be one side or the other always is a little slow on getting data, but this is probably a lot easier because it's just a police plan. So maybe it does get done probably the same time as the pension plans does. Any questions on that? These numbers are much more.
I have one question. It's Mike Vitello.
Go ahead.
On the OPEB portfolio, what does it consist of? Is it stocks, mutual funds, bonds? What does the portfolio consist of?
I like it. That's Devin's question.
Yeah, it's all mutual funds, Mike. And we just, after the last quarterly meeting, just added active management on the fixed income side for the first time. But the remainder, all of the equity exposure is passive funds. So they just track the indices.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure.
And no, this plan is at 6.5 right now, right? So it's where the pension plan is 6 3/4. That would just be Again, they don't always have to be the same, because even, the population's different. And you could be managing the assets differently, depending on the longevity of the participants, and things like that. Okay, any other questions on that? So we can jump to what we shall call it, I showed the same kind of slide for the OPEB that goes in the CAFR. It shows you're just 89% funded at 6/30/23. So that's pretty good for an OPEB plan. And we'll see that in a couple more slides. Go ahead. So each year we do kind of create a report that I think Ron should get. And it's where we look at the CAFRs, we pull all financial statements for all the plans in Connecticut. We kind of look at that, we analyze all the data and put it in so you can kind of see comparison of where you are compared to other towns. This first one shows, where people are and the investment rate assumption, right? You have a couple outliers up high over 7%. You can see most are in that 6 3/4 to 6.5, maybe some at 6 1/4 even, right? Typically, it's usually not too many are in between in the eighth. They're usually either 6, 6 1/4, 6.5. Although, like some of our clients, when they were at 7%, we started dropping them, we're stepping them down at an eighth at a time. So it'd be 6.375, 6.5, 6.625, and things like that. So there could be some that are in the middle of those brackets there. It's a little small, but I think you were in that 21 percentile. Oh no, you're in the 24, right? And they're kind of in the middle. This shows us that the average is around 6.5, 6.46 is what the report. Yeah, this is at 6/30/22. So a thing to remember that kind of is based on 20 and 21 valuations. 22 valuations will be most likely will be in this current CAFR where they are that we do. So right now those aren't even done, right? Most towns are just finishing them up, right? In January they try to finish them up because they have some kind of extension. So that's kind of what this data lags, but it kind of shows you where you are to your peers, even though it's a little behind sometimes.
And I think this is what Mike felt warranted a discussion about reducing because previously you had been right in line with peers and now your return assumption is a little bit higher.
Yep. So that's the investment return assumption.
Actually, at the time we moved to 6.75, I think we were a little ahead of the curve.
More
Probably,
conservative, right? Yep.
And since then, people have been stepping down.
Yeah.
Right, this year, a lot of them are old in the 23 valuations just because of inflation and capital market assumptions that Devin and our team would put out or other investment firms would put out, which show a rates in the high 7s. Most of my clients stay pat. Some are still dropping, but most have chosen to stay pat. That doesn't affect you because that's right now it's a 7. That's a 23 val. You're getting 24, so some of that would have dissipated or surpassed, and we might have a little better idea of where things are going to go in the future by 6/30. The next one, this is the funding ratio, which you guys are, you're in that third probably bracket, the 90 to 100%. What you do see on this, again, this is based on CAFR, so this is a market value of assets. You can see the 21 CAFR showed a lot higher funding ratio, right? That was after that big double digit, 25% returns, and then last year, 6/30/22 was probably negative 15% or something like that. So you can see everybody shifted back down a little bit. You're ahead of your peers.
Yeah.
Most of them.
And I've never seen it, so I apologize if I've missed it. Do you do any kind of schedule where you have the funding ratio attached to each to the discount rate attached to? So how many of the people in the 90 to 99% range?
Not in the chart. I'm not even sure how. I have to think through. And you're kind of getting subgroups in there. So you have to have a special chart just for that. So you'd have to group all the ones that are say at 6 3/4 and then do it that way.
I'm just wondering,
It could be done.
is there a lot of catch up are a lot of those discount rates lower for the ones that are plans that are underfunded, I guess is my question. Do you think?
Well, typically the ones that have a tougher time funding have the higher discount rates.
And are stuck there?
Yeah, and I get a lot of pushback from one of the bigger ones that refuses to drop it. You'd be in the top.
He's asking the problem.
Oh, they understand, but you can't get blood from a stone, right? You know, they're not gonna be able to go to the taxpayers and say, we need to increase the mill rate or whatever, because, you know, they can't generate. But the bigger cities tend to have a harder time coming up with the dollars, right? But if you have a smaller plan, you know, not to underscore, you know, if you only have a couple million in liability, your contribution is a couple $100,000, it's probably easier to manage. So when a bigger city could have a $25 million contribution, and you start talking for another $5 million to your budget, it's a harder pill to swallow, I guess. I give them the news and we talk through the scenarios and what they can and can't do. Some will just flip me in the face, say, it's not gonna happen. We can't afford it. We don't have the money. And they know their tax base better than I do. I can just give them, I can take the information data and present the information so they can best understand, make the proper decisions. So that's kind of how I look at what I do, I roll. So I think there's just the same 2 slides for OPEB if you want to see where you are in that regard.
Devin, how much time do you need?
It's fine, at least 15 minutes. I would say.
So,
Right.
so this just shows you all the plans that are funded, right? The first 2 bars where the Board of Ed OPEB would be. You know, there's 43 or 47%, I think, are still not funding. Because there's no reason to. I've had some that say, yeah, we don't have any benefit of funding the OPEB plan, so we don't. The next slide will show you where you are in regards to plans that do fund, right? I think that's what this one is. Yeah. And so you're pretty high, right? Okay, on the OPEB side for sure. And even on the pension side, you guys are in pretty good shape. And you do have a decent rate. You're 6.5. The OPEB is harder to do, but they tend to be lower, you know, because either you're not funding. If you're not funding, you're using a municipal bond rate, which is what at 630 was 3.65. Otherwise you're in that 6 to 7 range. You know, it's very similar to the pension side. Okay. We can, that's pretty much it. So the decisions are just going to be what rate we're going to look at. We tend to look at the mortality that would make, you know, that's always the biggest one in the news. And then, you know, if we ever want to do an experience study to look at all the assumptions, best practices do tell you to look at it every 3 to 5 years. I'm not sure we've ever done one for you guys. But I like to plant that seed, always something to think about. That's just, if you have lots of loss or gains in every year consistently, then you need to tweak the assumption and look at it. That's pretty much everything I have. Way to take too much of that.
No problem.
Does anybody have any further questions on this? Thank you very much. And in that case, we will move to new business item D, quarterly investment review for quarter 2023.
Okay. Mike Vitello, I have a question for you. Can you see what's on the screen?
I'm actually driving, so I'm on my phone.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just gonna,
Don't look
everyone
at the
else
screen.
is in the room, so I'm gonna stop sharing because it's a little hard for me to navigate because we all have hard copies.
Yeah,
So, is that okay?
Why, is there a question?
No, not at all.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No,
Oh,
you're good.
okay.
Okay, so the most important thing that we'll talk about today is the fiduciary governance calendar, because that's where we have our updated capital market assumptions. So what we do at this time of year, each year, is we input your portfolio into our asset allocation modeling system using our updated capital market assumptions, and then we model out what the expected return is. And it's a long-term expectation. It's over a 20-year period, but as Stefan already mentioned, this is a long-term asset pool. So on page 7 of the report, you'll see our capital market assumptions. So these are our return expectations. We have those expectations on both a 10-year time frame and then a 20-year time frame. So the 10-year is on page 7, 20-year is on page 8. 20-year expectations are a bit higher than what the 10-year are. So there are just modest differences between the two. I'll kind of focus on the 10-year outlook on page 7. So what you can see here is that we have a column for 2024 return assumptions, and then a column for 2023, and then a year-over-year change. So the biggest takeaway in the top third of this page is that our return expectations for fixed income have increased very substantially compared to last year. And again, it's not a 1 year expectation, it's, last year, what was our 10-year outlook? And then this year, what's our 10-year outlook? So to have a 60 basis point increase is pretty substantial. And what that's a reflection of is the fact that we were in a rising interest rate environment for, 18 plus months. And now the Fed is done with that rate hike campaign. So we don't expect to have that headwind of rising rates. Plus, now we have higher interest rates. So the coupon that investors are clipping is much higher. So the forward-looking outlook for fixed income is much stronger because we're not likely to have that headwind of rising interest rates on a go-forward basis. If anything, we think it's likely that interest rates will fall, which is a tailwind for fixed income. Plus, even if rates were to rise again, we have more of a cushion because of that higher coupon. So just a very long-winded way of saying that the outlook for fixed income is much better than it was a year ago. If you look at the middle of the page, we have our return expectations for global equity. They've come down modestly compared to last year, not a huge change. We still think that international markets, both developed markets and emerging markets, are likely to produce higher returns on a 10-year basis. But we also acknowledge that there's more risk associated with those asset classes, more volatility. We don't want to be substantially overweight, but we definitely want to have exposure. So you'll see those expectations there. And then finally, in kind of the everything else bucket, our return outlook for real estate and broad real assets, things like commodities, natural resource equities, infrastructure, those types of things. The outlook for both of those asset classes has increased. And we think that, we're likely to be in a period of time where inflation is kind of choppy. So last year we were in a moderating inflationary environment where the inflation number was, solidly coming down. There was no confusion about where the trend was. It was downward. Now we're kind of in that, what we call the messy middle. So we expect inflation to kind of keep bumping around somewhere between 2 to 4 or 5%. But with that type of volatility, things like real assets tend to do pretty well, because first of all, it's higher inflation than we've had, on a long-term historical basis. And also when you have unexpected changes in inflation, real assets tend to do well. So that's why you see a little bit more of an increased expectation for those areas.
So you think bumpy inflation can get to 5%?
I think we can have little pockets where a 1 month reading is 5%, but it wouldn't be the year over year reading we don't think it'll go back up to 5, but we don't think it's going to be a solid line down to that 2% target that Fed has. So, the biggest takeaway, and I'm looking at page 9, which is kind of our themes. The biggest takeaway is that finally fixed income looks attractive. And relative to equities, it looks attractive because equities had a great year last year, which means that their valuations look higher. So equities look more expensive. We're finally getting decent yields from fixed income, and we don't anticipate being in a rising interest rate environment anymore. So the outlook for fixed income is pretty good, which means that for most clients, we are increasing fixed income exposure. So if you flip ahead to page 10, this is our Frontier Engineer Outlook. And what this does is it models your current portfolio. And then we modeled 2 alternative portfolios, one with a 5 percentage point increase to fixed income, one with a 10 percentage point increase to fixed income. So right now you have 25% in fixed income. We modeled going up to 30 and then going up to 35. And what's interesting, if you scoot your eyes towards the group of gray shaded cells, the header is forecasts. We show the expected annualized return on a 20-year basis and then also on a 10-year basis. And what's really remarkable is that the return expectation doesn't differ that significantly between these 3 portfolios, which, you'd think a 35% allocation to fixed income is much more conservative than a 25% allocation. The return expectation is roughly the same, yet you are able to reduce the volatility pretty substantially. So if we go back to the discussion of return expectations, and right now we have a 6.75% return expectation. Let's say that we use the 10-year outlook, which is a little more conservative. Even the portfolio with 35% fixed, we think should probably get you there. Now, it's also important to note that the results that are being shown here, this is a median expected return. So what that means is that 50% of the time, the return could be higher, but 50% could be lower. Yep. So, you want to build in a little bit of cushion for that adverse effect. What we're doing for most client portfolios, and this includes for most municipal pension plans, is increasing the fixed income exposure by 5%, rather than going all the way to the 10. Because there's also like a common sense overlay. And even though the numbers work out that it looks like the return expectation is the same for a 35% versus a 30% fixed income portfolio, in practicality, we think the one with a little
Well,
more.
volatility works both ways.
Right, yeah,
So while it's more volatile downwards, it's also more volatile upwards
right,
and
exactly, yeah. You have more of a chance to make up for those years where the market might not.
So
You know.
kind of to tie the annualized return in with the discount rate.
Mhm.
I mean, does it make sense for us to drop the discount rate if the annualized rate of return is?
What this tells us is that it doesn't seem necessary. Not that it wouldn't make sense, but a couple of years ago, you weren't getting anything from fixed income. So it was really hard to justify a higher return expectation. Now, because the fixed income markets are so much better, it's like, okay, good, we can finally justify the return assumption that we've been using. And it's been like, oh boy, I don't know if we're gonna make it.
Sort of grew into it.
Exactly. So, it doesn't feel as dire to reduce that return expectation, but I do also think that, one of the big considerations is your peers, and, you don't want to be viewed as an outlier, but I don't think at 6.75 that you are a substantial outlier. You're a
And hey,
little bit
look,
higher
modeling
than-
and assumptions, it could change over the next 6 to 8 months too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We revisit in October, we have a number of months to see how these assumptions are playing.
Right. So our recommendation, what we have on page 12, is we show both of these portfolios. I would recommend moving to the 30% fixed income, just a 5 percentage point increase. And then, we can always revisit it at any point in time. But I don't think that a 10 percentage point increase in one fell swoop makes much sense. So I would suggest going with that middle column plus 5% fixed income. We take just a smidge off the table from domestic equity. The majority of it comes from the international equity allocation. And that's just a reflection of the fact that, there is more risk overseas. We've seen, in terms of the market cap breakdown, the overall opportunity set has become more heavily skewed towards domestic. So in order to keep kind of a neutral position, makes more sense to take a little off the table on international equity. So
And maybe I'm jumping ahead in the fixed income block, in Midwest and the Harbor Port.
correct.
That's how you want to get there, if you will. Is that the way to look at?
Not
Those two.
necessarily, that's kind of a different thing. So we actually have two voting items because the Met West Total Return Fund has been on watch for a couple of quarters. And there's just been a lot of organizational change. There are two of the very key portfolio managers, one left at the end of the year, one is retiring at the end of this year. There's just a lot of shifting going on. So we would prefer to eliminate Met West and move to the Harbor Core Bond Fund. So it's a manager recommendation rather than an allocation move.
And then everything else is just the change in the holdings.
In the
themselves.
target
Target
allocation.
allocation.
Yep. Yeah, so it's basically two voting items. One is replacing Met West with Harbor Core Bond, and one is changing the allocation from a 25 fixed income profile to a 30% fixed income.
now, if we were tempted to go the that they took their full 10%.
Mhm.
It sounds based off of, at least as of current projections, that if we wanted to go there at all, now would be the time to go up that high, because with interest rates falling, I bet that number is going to fall.
Mhm.
That if we wanted to go real conservative for a couple of years or something, for a year or 2 years, 3 years, now would be the time to do that. And then
Probably,
go down to
yeah.
the 5% or go down 5% in a couple of years.
Yeah. Yes and no. So we do think that 2023 is when we're going to start to see interest rates come down. The problem is that anytime you make a 10 percentage point shift in your portfolio, it means that you'd be taking 10% out of equities in a concentrated period of time. So your market risk is, yeah, like,
Okay.
so I don't like to make a move that substantial all in one fell swoop.
Do you want to keep going or do you want to?
Maybe we take a vote and then I'll just
Vote.
speed through the investment review super fast.
Okay, so we've got on new business item E. Is the replacement of NetWest for target for bond. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we replace the Metropolitan West Total Return Bond Fund with Harbor Core Bond Fund in its entirety.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
And with the first and the second, is there any further discussion or questions for Devin on these two? Topics?
No.
Two topics. Hearing no other question, no other questions, I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Item F, potential adjustment of the asset allocation profile of the pension portfolios. I will entertain a motion to increase the fixed income by 5%. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second,
First and a second, is there any further discussion?
only that the increase and allocations be consistent with the recommendation of Devin and her team.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
So the international equity, we're looking to decrease the target allocation, right?
Mhm.
But that's where we're looking at the highest potential returns over the 10 to 20-year period. Is it just to take risk off the portfolio and just?
Yeah, it's a nod to the volatility, the geopolitical environment right now with the conflicts going on, and also the opportunity set. So as you may remember from previous discussions, we try to be kind of neutral relative to the MSCI All Country World.
Mhm.
And the All Country World has become more skewed towards domestic equity. It's now about 62% domestic, 38% international, and that's basically where this proposal gets you in line with. A couple years ago, it was like 58 domestic. 40 to whatever. It's too late for my brain to do math right now. 42, thank you.
And Ron, if you look back on page 8, that's where you see the negative year-to-year change. That my guess, based off of this presentation and based off of what Devin's saying, is next year when we get the same exact thing, those numbers, that 10-year will continue in that trend, and you're gonna see that eventually it will even out more.
Perhaps,
Or at least
yeah. We
not be what the as great of a difference as it is right
Right.
now.
could be, yep.
Any other further questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to move the fixed income up by 5%, and also the table on page 12. And Devin's recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Okay,
And
I'll do
we'll continue.
speed round, yep, within the next 3 minutes, so.
Well,
Okay.
We'll see how people roll in.
All right, that's fine.
I just gotta change over on this.
Okay. if you look at page 27, this shows kind of a good snapshot of the town pension plan. And then we have a similar snapshot for the Board of Ed plan on page 42. They have the same underlying allocation, all the same manager. So if we focus on the town plan on page 27, you can see on a 1-year basis, the portfolio is up 16%. Last year was a great year for the markets. Far cry from 22, which was a dismal year for the markets. So the portfolio was able to make back all that it had lost. And then if you look on over the last 5 years, the annualized return of the portfolio is 8%. So over the last 5 years, it's been north of that 6 3/4% target. On a longer term basis, that since inception number, not quite at that 6.75%. For the most part, you've been, right in line with the benchmark. We've had a couple areas of the portfolio that have outperformed. Fixed income has been a great outperformer. We don't have any managers that we're particularly concerned about other than the Met West, which we just voted to replace. One other thing I'll call your attention to is the since inception dollar amount on the top right-hand side of page 27. So both the town pension and the Board of Ed pension started with about 10 million in assets. And since that point in time, you've had net outflows in the form of pension payments of about 1.5 million and investment gains of 6 million to bring you to the current value of about 14.6. So some pretty strong growth over the past, about 8 years. Very similar profile on the pension side. We have all of the same underlying managers. Again, not concerned about any of those managers with the exception of Met West, which we voted to approve. And then OPEB is shown on page 56. As Stefan already referenced, a much smaller plan. This plan is at 2.4 million. If we look at the since inception dollar amounts, you started off with 700,000. You have contributed 1.25 million, and then you've had investment gains of just over 460,000 to bring you to that 2.4 million. And results over the past year have been pretty closely aligned with what we see on the pension side, up 15.8% for this portfolio. And again, similar results on a 5-year basis of 7.9 annualized. So things are moving in the right direction. In terms of what we expect this year, we don't expect markets to be as strong as they were last year, but we don't see any real, flashing red signals on the horizon. We're pretty optimistic about the market environment, the economic environment.
So talk a little bit more about what you think the Fed's going to do. Where are you on the Fed's interest rates?
Yeah, we think the Fed will begin decreasing rates at some point, probably not at the March meeting. And the market has priced in 1.4 percentage points in decreases. We don't think it's going to be that much. We think maybe it'll be 3 decreases of 25 basis points each. So that's a pretty big disparity. The 75, which we think will actually happen, versus 140, which is what the market is pricing in. So if the Fed doesn't come through with those really aggressive rate cuts, which the market is, kind of expecting and hoping for, we could see some disappointment, which could result in some short-term market volatility. But, corporations are pretty strong. The consumer is still pretty strong, not nearly as strong as they were, kind of right after the pandemic started, when we had that big savings built up and folks were getting money from the government. And, we're not seeing that kind of strength, but the consumer is still pretty resilient, and we don't really see any big warning signs. We could enter into a recession. Recession is a normal part of the economic cycle.
What's your feeling in terms of how likely that is? That seems to be.
I guess if I had to put odds on it at 50-50, but I wouldn't think that it would be a particularly prolonged or really deep recession. It's kind of a modest.
Feeling for when? Are you
Not
putting
really.
anything on the table for that?
I mean, really, one of our market themes for this year is.
Hey, we get once a quarter to put it on the spot and ask the questions.
No, it's funny, one of the market themes on the first page of the capital markets review is prepare, not predict. So all year long, last year, people were predicting a recession, and what good did that do? What you can do is prepare with an all-weather diversified portfolio that should,
And when you're talking increasing fixed income, that's the exact
yeah,
purpose.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, any further questions? Anybody got any other questions? And I will, if not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. Yeah, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Great to see you all.
You as well.
Sorry you had to do a little bit of rushing through.
Come on.